about the psychosocial development, and I'll be talking about psychology. Now, there's many different types of psychologies, like clinical psychology, educational psychology, or behavioral psychology. But today I'm going to be talking about the development of psychology. And so the beginning of the psychology world began in 1879 when William Hunt first discovered the first laboratory. And ever since then, many psychologists were able to contribute many ideas to the world. For example, like Carl Rogers, Anna Freud, Sigmund Freud, Jean Piaget, Kohlberg, and today I'm going to be talking about Erik Erikson. So the theory was created by Erikson, well, he was basically modified, and he basically mentions how everyone goes through crisis in their lives, beginning from an infant towards an elderly individual. So I first didn't like psychology, but ever since I came here, I gave it a chance, especially because my mom graduated from UCLA and she's actually a psychologist, so I'm like, why not give it a try, right? Because she sounds so smart in the house. I want to know what kind of terms she's actually going through. So Erik Erikson was a great contributor to the Psychology Society, and it will help us learn more about the psychosocial development. So a preview is that I'm going to be talking about the definition of this typical psychology and what it represents, what it signifies, and the different stages and the differences between the both that I will explain today. So let's begin. What is the psychosocial development? So this is the chart, and these are like 8 stages that occurs in Erikson stages of psychosocial development. So you have the infants to 18 months that go through this crisis called the trust versus mistrust, or from 18 months to 3 years old, autonomy versus shame and doubt, and so on and so forth to 65 years and older. So this idea was actually introduced by Sigmund Freud. He was the one that influenced Erik Erikson. And it was actually called the psychosexual stages at first. And he basically talked about how, we release sexual energy with the people that we encountered. But Erikson took a different approach in 1959, and he thought of it as a psychosocial development where everyone, like I said, would be part of a crisis. And according to Almian from the National Association for the Education of Young Children, retrieved on April 21, 2016, Erikson was more of an ego psychologist rather than Freud, who was an id psychologist. And the difference between the two is Erikson was more on the human development of society, where Freud was more on to like the sexual stages of the individuals. So next I'll be talking about one of the stages, which is what an infant goes through: basic trust versus mistrust. So what this is, well, basically, like I said, from 12 to 18 months, what they hope to achieve is hope and optimism, meaning that, when they have their mothers, let's say they're crying, they're hungry, they want milk, right? They can't eat like tacos or anything because they're still babies, right? So when they're getting breastfed, and once they feel that secure milk consistently, and that's a great mother, a good enough mother, which is described in psychology, but I won't go into that. Once they realize that the mother is there for them, breastfeeding them consistently, they realize like, oh, I can trust this individual. I can understand like, oh, she's there for me, she's breastfeeding me, and I really appreciate that. But secondly, I would describe the downfall and the consequences of that. Let's say if the mother was well, first off, according to Arts in 1988 from the Merle Palmer Quality Institution, retrieved on April 21, 2016, the downfall that was described was based on, let's say you have a ignorant or neglectful mother that's not really there for you, or whatever that mother may be. Then the infant would have trust issues later on, not even as a baby, but continuing to be, whether she's a teen or a 30-year-old individual. So I just spoke to you about how an infant's crisis they go through. Now we'll talk about crisis in an adolescence. Now, I don't know about you all, but when I came into college, before I came into college, there was always these high school teachers that told me, you're gonna find your true identity when you get to college. And I always thought about, like, what does that mean? Like, I know who I am right now, what do you mean when I go to college? So basically, between 12 to 19 year old, you know, adolescents, they go through this same type of crisis where they don't know how to identify themselves carefully, or they don't know, they're confused of what their role is in society and what society expects for them to fulfill. So, according to McAdams' scholarly journal published by Psychological Inquiry in the year 2000, um, this was a major issue because many individuals had trouble defining themselves. So let's say portraying themselves like the issue of a transgender. Everyone has an issue like, oh, he can't use the bathroom here because you don't know if they're gonna hurt the female or etc. But then they're just trying to find their true identity or what they want. Or coming to college, we want to know like what we want to do in life 20 years from now. Like, what do you want to do 20 years from now? You know?
Probably a physical therapist or a personal trainer.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I don't know. You know, for people like me, I don't know what to do. You know, but that's good. That's good. You know what to do. But for individuals like me, I'm still kind of not confused, but I'm still debating what I want to do in life. And while the differences between the trust versus mistrust and the identity versus role confusion is basically this issue right here takes a bit more. It's a bit more harder for individuals. I mean, yeah, it's harder for trust versus mistrust to occur as well, but at the same time, this is where we're more older and we're trying to figure out in life like what we want to do, how we portray ourselves not in front of others but also in front of our families and whatnot. So I hope that you understand this idea of the human development, social development, psychosocial theory, and I just want to recap. I just talked about the definition of psychosocial development, the stages, and the differences between the trust versus mistrust and identity versus role confusion. And whenever you find yourself in a crisis, just, you know, understand or try to figure out which one of these categories that you fall in. Thank you.